No.
Hi, everyone. This is Chastity Melvin, host of True Sport Podcast. And today I have a fabulous panel with me. I'm going a little bit different. Basketball shut down. Hi, everyone. This is Chastity Melvin, host of True Sport Podcast. And today I have a fabulous. I'm going a little bit different. Basketball shut down. Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me make sure mic. Okay, hold on 1 second. All right, again, hi everyone. My mic had technical difficulties there, but this is Chastity Melvin. All right, again, hi. Okay, is there echo for you guys as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
My mic had technical difficulties there, but this is Chastity. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Is there echo for you guys as well?
Yeah. Do you want me to mute my?
No, I'm not sure that's what's going on. And there's David.
You want me to mute my?
No, I'm not sure that's what's going on. There's David. I just worked with everything, and now it's.
Hi, David.
Hello. How are you?
Doing well.
Good.
Chas is working out a few technical issues, so.
All good. All good. I should probably grab some water, man.
Yeah.
Let me grab some water just in case.
Cammie, did you see the other officers were charged? Do you know what they were charged with? I'm behind.
I should have updated before now. Yeah, I saw that his charge was upgraded to second degree.
Okay.
But, hold on a second.
We were charged with aiding and abetting murder.
Mm.
Oh, the other officers?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What does that mean, Cammie? Well, I don't want to talk too early, so. I mean, is that a legitimate charge? I guess, is that a legitimate charge?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's part of the criminal code. I'm not sure what the maximum consequences would be, and it's going to be put on trial. So, unless they plead to.
Hi, everyone. I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's a little bit better. Welcome, David.
What's up? How are you?
We just had a little technical difficulties. The timeout until the real star of the show came on. So, no pun intended. There's a bigger star on the show than me today, David West. So, no, all of you guys are stars. That's why I have you on here. And I'm so glad to have some of my most intelligent friends on the show, because I am more than an athlete. But more than an athlete, I'm an African-American woman. That's mostly what I know. And obviously, I've been a little emotional all week, just with everything going on. And I almost canceled the show. But Alan my friend Alan King, who is president and chief operating officer of Workplace Options headquarters in Raleigh, emailed me and said, I didn't get a link. So, he motivated me because I was just about to email all you guys and be like, I don't think
I wouldn't have emailed.
So let me introduce everyone. Again, this is Chastity Melvin. I'm host of True Sport Podcast. I'm normally talking about basketball, but basketball shut down right now. Although, basketball never stops. Technically, this is the first time for many of us that it has. And I'm well aware of everything that's going on. So let me introduce my guests. I have Alan King, as I just mentioned. He's president and chief operating officer of Workplace Options here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Next to him is Carmela Jackson. She's a civil attorney in Miami, Florida, but she also has worked on some criminal cases. And one of my very best friends, she went to law school at North Carolina Central University. So shout out to her. Below us, we have David West, two-time NBA All-Star, NBA champion with the Golden State Warriors. If many of you don't know about it, he is about to start the first historical professional collegiate basketball league. Mm-hmm. So shout out to him. So we're going to talk about a little of the challenges he's facing. And if you aren't very familiar with David West, he also started protesting during the national anthem long before Colin Kaepernick. It wasn't as publicized, but he did stand 2 feet behind his teammates during the national anthem, even though Chris Paul tried to get him to get in line with everyone else. And next to him, must say one of my closest friends and the most intelligent person in my family, my sister, Dr. Danielle Kuntz. I'm calling her doctor. She is a PhD candidate have a PhD in sociology with race and social movements. So she's, I give her that. And I have to call her doctor eventually, but I still got time, but I'm putting it in the universe. So you got to get it done. One more year, no pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, fourth quarter. All right, well, let's get started. So obviously, we're reading the tweets. We see the protests. We hear Donald Trump. I don't really give Donald Trump a lot of anything on my timelines or any of my social media, but I know he bothers a lot of folk out there. But just with the murder, and I will say murder of George Floyd, if you haven't seen the video, he had the same issue that we've seen with a lot of the law enforcement kind of taking things into their own hands and just going above and beyond as far as arresting people of color. He had a knee in his neck. He claimed that he couldn't breathe. There were 4 police officers. No one tried to stop it. Darnella, a young African-American girl, videotaped it. And there were obviously people out there trying to tell them to stop. They didn't. And he lost his life. Therein lies, I didn't mention COVID-19 and quarantine, but I guess with everyone having time to really not have any place to go, more people were more focused in it. As I can say, more people became more emotional. And now a lot of our youth, young, middle-aged, and old, are protesting and want laws and everything changed in regards to people of color and the police brutality, and all sorts of things have been happening. I'm excited about some of the conversations that have been started, from the NCAA to multi-million-dollar companies, to mayors, governors, and different ones speaking up. So I want to get started really quickly, and I'm going to start with the athlete, of course, where I'm more comfortable with. But David, not too long ago, people were up in arms. I won't say they were out protesting, but LeBron James and Kevin Durant kind of got things started with Laura Ingraham from Fox Reporter. Remember, she had her own show on Fox, and she said the athletes need to shut up and dribble. Can you talk a little bit about how that made you feel when you heard that, and there were conversations going on around about that?
Oh yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to the conversation. But I think we've always been under this light of folks expecting athletes to just sort of be there, and oftentimes people just want us to perform, just want us to exist to their benefit. So that's where her comment was coming from, that place. Oftentimes people don't care. I'm gonna just be honest. They don't care what we have to say because we serve a certain purpose and a certain role in their life. And that's, entertainment and fandom and things like that. So I don't think that her views obviously were not unique. A lot of people feel that way. It's up to us as athletes, though, to be convicted and to feel that it's our right, to speak our minds and speak our piece and add coherence to some of the conversations that go on nationally. And then the last piece is, I think athletes have a responsibility. I'm not a big fan of Charles Barkley, and I've made that clear. But the idea is that we have a responsibility to be a model for young people, regardless of whether or not it's something personal that you decide. The way that our society is set up, oftentimes, athletes and entertainers and celebrities are celebritized to the point that young people genuinely think and look at people in positions like NBA players and NFL players and superstar entertainers as the standard for them in terms of what they want to model themselves after. And even if you're an athlete and say, well, that's not my responsibility, it comes with the territory. And we've got to be responsible in what we say. And, my message to athletes is be as informed as you possibly can, because young people are always listening. Young people are always getting their cues from us, even when we don't realize it. That's why it's so important that athletes don't shut up and dribble, that athletes' perspectives are heard. Guys are courageous enough to give their perspectives because young people are watching.
Dr. Koontz, in response to what David just said about how important athletes are and how young people really look up to them and follow what they do, with getting your PhD in sociology and race and social movements, what are some types of things that athletes can do to strategize better in using their platforms and using their voice?
I think like this generation of athletes, I think they're doing a great job because the simple fact that the social media platform has really been an equalizer, and whether they are posting their own thoughts or even retweeting or reposting someone else, it helps to spread the message. And again, some of these are assumptions, but I imagine that, and David, you can, confirm this or annul it, but I imagine that you guys have your own sources that you go to because, I was a college athlete and I remember that the sport is consuming of your time. Right. So as much as you want to be educated, you're giving so much of your time to the sport that it's nice to have people in your corner who are actually doing the work that can be your mouthpiece and that can kind of be the bridge so they can give you the rundown really quickly. So that's the part that I'm the most passionate about, having been a former collegiate athlete and then being your sister and being in the world of professional sports through you. I realized and that's something that we've done, Chastity, probably since college. You would call and say, D, what is this? How should I think about this? What's the truth? And, I would mash it up for you and cut it up in small pieces because your time is so valuable and you have to give so much of it to the sport. So one thing I've always said, I don't think you should try to force the Dr. J to be Dr. King. They should be two separate people. But unfortunately, sometimes our Dr. Kings don't get a platform anymore. So now our Dr. Js have to be the voice for everybody. And it's really unfair because you only see that in Black America. No one ever really sticks a microphone in front of Tom Brady. He can be a quarterback. I remember with his MAGA hat, he pretty much was, I think he got a few questions about it and that was it. But as soon as something happens, they're in LeBron James's face, they're in Steph Curry's face, they're in Cam Newton's face. Black athletes have to be the Dr. King, the Malcolm X, they have to be the Cornel West, right? Because they're the ones who are getting the media. And I really think that's intentional. I think that's another effect of systematic racism because they've essentially snuffed out the voices of everyone but the athlete, but the entertainer. So you're asking people, and again, I was an athlete and I've read about entertainers' lives, and as glamorous as it looks, they're putting a lot of work in. So you're asking somebody who may be filming a movie for 12 hours a day, and then you're putting a microphone in their face. Well, what do you think about Eric Garner? Was he resisting? And then what happens is we critique their responses, right? And so then we make it worse. So then you have a bunch of angry Black people and white people critiquing the responses of athletes and entertainers who really don't have the time to invest in becoming knowledgeable, right? I'm getting a PhD, so I've made this my life right now, but no one's putting a microphone in my face, right? So figuring out ways to bridge that gap, and then finding media outlets that are willing to bring in those voices, right? Because I mean, my husband and I was talking. What happened to Tavis Smalley? What happened to Dr. Cornel West, Michael Eric Dyson? They all get a little bit of playtime, but and even Reverend Al Sharpton, right? Like we bring them on during an incident, and then we don't hear from them anymore throughout the year, right? But everybody is wanting LeBron James to say something with his 3 kids and wife and his other responsibilities off the court. We want him to have all the solutions. And I just think that's completely unfair.
Right.
And our Black athletes in the 60s did not have to do that because Dr. Martin Luther King had the microphone in his face, so those are my quick thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you both for your thoughts. We're going to bring 2 of my other guests on really quick, and I just want to talk to them. Carmela Jackson, she's a civil attorney. If you're just joining in, this is Chastity Melvin's True Sport Podcast, and I'm having a meaningful conversation about race, power, politics, and protests. Also, Alan King, President, Chief Operating Officers of Workplace Options here. So we got to talk about COVID a little bit. Has COVID gone away? I mean, now with the protests and everything. So Cammie, first, if you can answer, then Alan, after Cammie answers this question, how has COVID-19 affected the firm that you work with, and in turn, your overall, everything's gone virtual now in general. So could you 2 both talk a little bit about how COVID-19 has affected you in those areas, and then now with just the uproar and protests, now you have to deal with something else as it affects the workplace and business and different organizations. So Carmel, I'll let you go first, and then Alan, just jump right in after her.
Thank you, Chastity, first for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And yeah, your podcast is meaningful, and this type of conversation is great. I think that with COVID-19, there's so much information out there. And obviously there are, polarized viewpoints on whether we should, just take off the mask and go for it. Where I live in Miami-Dade County, in Miami Beach particularly, you're required to wear a mask in any retail places. So we're still taking, precautions. And my workplace, we've been completely remote. I'm a shareholder at a firm of 180 plus attorneys statewide. And so, it's great because it's allowed us to know that we can work remotely and that people can be effective. As far as the protests and connection with COVID, I think that when it comes to fighting for civil rights, that health, a general health pandemic obviously falls, second. And I think that our ability to exist and be free and have, the core rights that Americans are supposed to have is much more important. It doesn't even come into a context where you would weigh out, well, do I want to, worry about catching a virus, or do I want to fight for human rights? Our predecessors, our ancestors have fought and died, for those rights. I think that, individually, we must weigh out those options. And I think that, it's been encouraged that if you're going to protest, which is very important that we do so, I think that it's been effective, but that we also wear masks or gloves or, protect yourselves. Be smart about it in a multitude of ways.
For our company, we're sort of in a unique position because what we do is work with other organizations to help their workplaces and their employees cope with incidents just like this. So for us, in terms of the business of our organization, we've had more demand and more need for our services than at any time in our history. More than 1 million new people just in the last 4 weeks covered by our services. But then there's also our own employees and keeping them safe, moving our businesses, not just in the United States, but our businesses around the world. And we first started this in January with our office in China, and keeping them safe and aware and engaged and comfortable is clearly a challenge. But as you know, as we've been talking about, when you look at the protests, this is a different dimension. It's not about COVID. It's about something far more fundamental and far more significant than the illness that appeared just a few months ago. Racism in this country didn't appear a few months ago, and it's not going to disappear with a pill. It's not going to disappear with a vaccine. It's something that's almost bred in the bone of our country. And so the need to focus and to push, and obviously we need to be safe and cautious, but all of those things are relative terms when someone is kneeling on someone's neck and killing them. That's not safe. That's not an environment that we as employers, we as human beings can manage or support.
Thank you both. Staying on that topic, Alan, how when you talk, like, now everyone's coming out, businesses are putting out tweets. A lot of people that never, I would say, made a politically correct statement before, there are more being put out now. I've had a lot of colleagues of mine that have emailed me and said, you know, they wanted to get educated more. I have people apologizing, which I quite feel some type of way with that, when some of my colleagues call and apologize. But what is your organization done just to make sure that your workers feel really good during this time? Or I guess what I want to ask is, how do you make people of color feel heard and feel valued at your workplace? And also, what strategically do you do in your human resource department, as well as other departments, to just let people understand that everyone is important there? Because I've been a part of some organizations and we just don't talk about it. You know, sometimes I feel like when I did start working a 9-to-5 and also just being at my college institute, I felt like I had to mask myself when these types of things went on, because everyone else just didn't want to talk about it. And so what do you do with workplace options to kind of?
So, you know, for us, it's not about a precipitating factor, so that we're not beginning a conversation. As long as I've been with the company, which is more than 18 years, we've been having the same conversation. And there's something sad in that, but there's also something empowering in that, because even though we can't make change at national levels and other levels, we can create in our own organization the kind of place that we would love to see mirrored in the rest of our state, of our city, and of our country, and of the world. So, you know, it starts by accepting inclusion and diversity as a core part of who we are. You know, we have unashamedly co-opted the motto of the state of North Carolina, which is to be rather than to seem, as the heart of how we describe the culture and value of our organization. So my job as CEO of the company, the job of every person within the organization, is to promulgate an environment where we encourage each person who works at WPO to live their authentic life. We not just encourage that, we make it safe for them to do that. And what's critical for us is that because we serve so many other people, that's a core part of what makes our service so effective and our outcomes so strong, is because the empathy that comes from walking in someone's shoes, of being able to connect to someone's life experience, and that the diversity of our organization reflects the diversity of the individuals who we support and serve. And that's been key long before the protest this year, and this will continue to be the heart of what we do as a company.
Awesome. So, Alan, would it be fair to say that your organization is very concerned about appealing to the heart of humanity in general?
It's our calling. You know, it's not
Awesome.
just who we are as a being. It's the bread and butter of our business. It's how we make a difference.
Awesome. And speaking about that, David, and those for joining in, David West here. Alan King was President, Chief and Operating Officer of Workplace Options. Just spoke brilliantly about how he is valuing his workers and the diversity there at his organization. David, you are now retired from playing in the NBA for 15 plus years, and now you have the challenge of starting the first professional collegiate basketball league. What challenges have you faced as far as gaining support as an African American man, and then starting a business that could compete with professional leagues not only here in the NBA or in the NBA, but China and across the globe?
Well, you know, it's a challenge, but it's like it's the right side of history, right? So currently, the college system is an exploitative system, and every court that has ever looked at what the NCAA has done has basically said that much, but we haven't really been able to change that. You know, people have tried. The group of athletes tried to unionize in Northwestern. That didn't work. People have tried to take, you know, these guys to court. That hasn't worked. The only place they've never been competed with is in the market. And so, you know, we want to start at a compensation idea in terms of college athletes generate billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars every year for colleges, and create opportunities, business opportunities, employment opportunities, create legacy opportunities and generational wealth opportunities for families, except theirs. And so, you know, we're creating our league in the hopes of giving players another option, a professional path that's still inside the confines of the collegiate system in terms of what ages we're seeking to impact and the young people that we're seeking to work with. Giving them an option that, again, is not tied to them going 7,000 miles away. Also isn't necessarily tied to them being ready to take the NBA jump in a year. But giving them something where, you know, we're dealing with, I think right now, over 700 kids in the transfer portal. We've got, you know, thousands of kids that are, you know, walking that line of eligibility. We understand that particularly young African-American men who play sports, right, don't have access to resources. So oftentimes these guys are on paths and that aren't the best in terms of their options once they are academically ineligible. I don't feel that a guy's career path, particularly if he wants to play basketball, should be tied to his ability to, you know, fit into a traditional educational model when he hasn't been provided the resources properly to be ready for those. And so we find a lot of guys who, once they realize they academically can't make it, they give up on their dreams. And so we want to meet players where they are. We're going to make available vocational, trade, community college and junior college opportunities, technical college opportunities, and online opportunities, you know, to meet guys where they are, offer players opportunities that don't exist right now. And when it comes to college sports, you know, athletes are the guys with the fewest amount of options. You know, oftentimes you see that when schools make mistakes, when coaches mess up, when boosters get involved, the players are the ones that take the blunt of the responsibility. It is the players that are penalized more often than the coaches. And so we want to create a system that's fair, that's more fair and more balanced for the players themselves as young athletes.
Awesome. Well, we have a few questions. I'm going to bring in. I have Dr. Kuntz on here, Carmela Jackson, she's a law attorney, David West, NBA superstar champion, and Alan King, President and Chief Operations Officer of Workplace Options, and then your host, Chastity Melvin. So we have someone, and the question is, we tiptoe around the truth, speak open dialogue. I guess we're not getting to the nitty gritty of what people want to hear, inclusion, diversity, training for a lot of people. Real change is open. So, I guess we can kind of get started on, and D, I'll let you start it off. You hear some people say we need another Dr. Martin Luther King, but he was hated too. And Bernice King was quoted on on CNN as saying that if changes aren't made, versus yet what do you think she meant by that?
I think it's pretty clear. I mean, people are fed up. The type of rage that you're seeing, the protest, the anger, the hurt, the tears, and she should know. If anyone, like we've been feeling this for decades, right? So this is not just because of Mr. George Floyd. I mean, this hurt stems from Emmett Till and from Harriet Tubman, right? Like, I think we finally got an official apology, maybe in the 2000s, about slavery. So progress has been extremely slow. And so if we don't seize this moment, I'm concerned about where we will go as a democratic nation from here. In terms of we need a Dr. Martin Luther King, I think we have some, but America, we're different. Even as Black people, we're very different from how we were back during the 50s and 60s, so ask our parents or our grandparents, all Black people lived together, right? And so you didn't have to worry about going over to the gated community to talk to the Black folks there or going to the suburbs. Like the doctor lived right down the street from the wino who lived right down the street from the pastor. So you could organize, much more quickly. Everybody went to the same church, right? And those times are not coming back. So we just have to be realistic, and we have to be okay with all of us being Dr. Martin or Dr. Martina King, if you may, and support the people who are trying to fill that void. And like I said, I think the media has been really implicit and explicit in making sure that we don't give those voices a platform, So I think they're there. There's some people that are doing some great work, but, we have 5 networks who are controlling most of the media. So it's really difficult for them to be seen on a huge scale.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. My next question is for Cammie. So Cammie, I know that you do a lot with a nonprofit there in Miami. So what is it that you kind of help those? I know there are a couple of nonprofits that are out there that's to support, but what is it that you do from that perspective to kind of help those that are impoverished and people of color as far as the law system is concerned?
So I'm on the board of directors of an organization called The Good Fight, Inc. And the purpose is to provide free or very inexpensive legal representation to minorities and low-income people. And I think that, the inspiration of the organization was that oftentimes when resources can make all the difference in the world, and that obviously the law plays an important role in all of our lives, whether we choose, to have it affect us or not. And that if we are armed or feel like we have the ammunition of having confidence in our attorney, or that someone's there, someone's speaking on our behalf, then we can handle everything from that point forward. Let's say you get pulled over at a traffic stop. If you know that you have a good lawyer, because oftentimes people in the minority communities or low income, they don't have a sibling or a relative or even a good friend that's a lawyer. They can just pick up the phone as a resource and say, hey, they're going to handle it. If it's Trump charges, then, no pun intended, then I've got the appropriate, person, on my speed dial that can help me with it. And so I think I think that in simple forms, I think mobilizing and actually executing on the energy that we have right now is very important. And by giving people access to, solid legal representation, then it allows them to even react differently. If you're pulled over, oftentimes, if you're pulled over, let's say you're pulled over and you end up going to jail, it can unravel your whole life. What if you left your kids at home while you ran to the store?
I think we lost Cammie. I'm not sure where she went. She was actually getting really good there. So, David, Cammie didn't finish about, it does help. It will help ease people's minds and those of our brothers. There you are, Cammie. Yeah, you were just finishing up.
I don't know.
obviously having that resource helps those when they get pulled over because.
Oh, yes. But because, I mean, in that moment, I mean, and especially for minorities, I mean, kind of like, for lack of better words, it's your life could flash before your eyes. You don't know what could unravel. Something as simple as passing what someone may think is a $20 bill can end up in the end of your life, So how you're in it, I'm not saying in any way it's the person who, who's being pulled over. It's not their fault. We can't control those, and that's part of the problem. But we know that if we know that we have, a solid legal representation, someone, oftentimes you can't afford a lawyer. You don't know a lawyer. Whatever state appointed a lawyer may not, their caseloads are so large that they don't have time. If your freedom is at stake, then you're not going to be on the list. I mean, so much can happen that if you have a solid, partner in the fight against whatever may lie ahead, then things can be taken care of, that you have access to freedom, just the same as anyone else. And oftentimes minorities and people in low income communities don't have that. So that's just the beginning of the unraveling of something that may not seem logical for an average person, but for us it could destroy our lives. So I think that having, access to bridging that gap and having access to justice and having access to lawyers is super important. And the Good Fight Inc. does that.
Awesome. Having access goes back to what I want to talk to David about and myself. I know when I started playing professional basketball and just learning more and having access, I mean, when I got the car and Cammie, D, you guys were with me when we had our brothers, our boyfriends drove the truck when I first got my contract, they got pulled over all the time. And, we had to sit in the car with the police flashing the lights in on them and hearing my dad give us the whole long speech before we left, don't say anything, stay calm and those kind of things. So, David, you can touch on this too, but a lot of people like to tell athletes, you guys are out of touch. Like somehow because we got a contract, although mine might have been a lot smaller than yours, we were removed from the culture, in a sense. So could you just describe a time where, you encountered a problem with the police, or just how you feel raising your son, some of the things you might, tell your son as far as it goes with law enforcement, or just we've seen over the decades, with NBA guys being out of the club, just things happen. And just because we have what they say, wealth and financial stability, that somehow we get removed from the culture. So could you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think oftentimes people use these qualifiers, right? When you're listening to people have conversations and, well, I'm a dad, I'm a doctor, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a law-abiding citizen. And I look at myself and say, I'm all those things. I've got a son, I've got a daughter, I've got a wife, I've got parents, brothers and sisters. We're citizens, right? We pay taxes, we contribute to the society. And it's not too much of an ask for us to get equal and fair treatment under the law. We understand that historically, this is something that we've always demanded. We've never been able to quite get there, but it's something that we've always demanded. And regardless of where you are in your life, in your climb or your ladder, your reach towards success, particularly if you're a Black American, you don't escape racism. You don't escape systematic oppression. This system is not built or designed around individual actors. It's not individual acts of meanness and things like that kind of make up what racism is. We're talking about a widespread system that's not just domestic, but it's a global thing. And we're constantly dealing with that. I think the issue that people have is part of what I was saying earlier in my first statement, which is athletes have to do a better job of being informed. The people who stay, I'm on Twitter and social media or whatever, so I know that there are some people that legitimately push back against athletes when athletes say certain things, and sometimes the pushback is legitimized because the athlete seems or he appears to be disconnected. Maybe speaking his heart, maybe speaking from a genuine place, but he's not able to read the room the right way. And so that's why being informed, understanding, you know, you don't have to be a history person like myself, but you need to be informed because you are a parent, you're a son or a daughter, you're you know, a contributor to the society. And when you're in a position like an athlete, you often have a pedestal. And if, you know, what my advice has been doing all of this the last couple of weeks with guys, I've been getting hit up like, you know, D West, I just want to, you know, say something, but I don't know what to say. I'm telling guys, look, you know, the best thing you can do for yourself is if you don't know what to say, find the organizations that know what to say. Support those organizations. If you don't want to support those organizations, go to their websites, like something as simple as going to their websites, watching the little videos on their websites, finding out what these grassroots organizations are about, and then go repeat those messages on your platform. You know, go champion those messages on your platform. Tell people, hey, I read about this great work that these people were doing in this small corner or that small corner. That's a contribution. And I tell guys, look, the fact of the matter is athletes, entertainers are not going to change the problems that this nation has. It is the power structure. It is the people behind the halls and walls of power that have got to change the nature of this society. If they don't decide, if they don't make it up in their minds that they're going to change, it doesn't matter what David West says or any other athlete, any other place says, because we don't have the power. We are not in the institutional position to make the type of change that this society ultimately needs. We're falling behind. If you look at our healthcare system, our educational system, our ability to take care of the elderly, our ability to take care of children when they're born, our women die with higher death rates during birth than any other place in the developed world. These are issues that athletes can't solve. I don't care how popular you are, how famous you are, how many millions of followers you have. These are issues that athletes cannot, entertainers cannot solve. A message from an athlete or an entertainer that makes you feel good, it warms your heart, is not going to solve the deep structural issues that this nation is facing. We can be advocates. We can be on the front line in terms of bringing recognition, being symbols like Brother Kaepernick is to the issues at hand. But it is the power brokers that are going to have to ultimately shift this society toward one that produces positive outcomes for the majority of its citizens. Right now, we have a society that is not producing positive outcomes for the majority of people in this country. And people's rage right now is bubbling over. We're recovering from this COVID thing. People have been cooped up. The government response to it has been, I don't even know what a word to put on it, but we find ourselves in this space, and we're looking for athletes, we're looking for entertainers, we're looking for people to say some magic word that's going to ease sort of the tension, and it's just not going to be enough. Not at this stage because of social media, the awareness that level that the young generation is in, what they're demanding, what they're sort of pushing the envelope in terms of the agitation that's going on. And I don't think they're going to be able to be pacified. I think that's why we all kind of feel a little bit different about where we are, because we don't feel like people can just be pacified as folks were in the past. We're at a pivotal moment in this country, and it's going to take a lot more than just feeling, good words and good feelings to get us beyond this point. That's just, I know that's a lot, but that's just where I am with it. I mean, I feel like we just have to be realistic about where we are, be realistic about the challenges that we're facing, and address those challenges. And, again, we've got to put intelligent people in front of the cameras. We got to put intelligent people in the think tanks and intelligent people to shape sort of, the context of the society that we want and we want to leave here for our children.
Yeah, I agree. We gotta get more podcasts with sponsorships so we can put a mic in front of Carmela Jackson and Danielle Melton, because we have some really intelligent ladies out here. And
Right.
obviously we've gone over 30 minutes that I wanted to have time with you guys, but I can make my sister stay on and finish up until 8 o'clock. But before I let David and Alan and Cammie go, I'm the big sister. So she's got to stay on with me. I just want to ask a question because you all have a unique space in your family and personal life. And I know I have raw emotions just because of my 6 beautiful nieces and nephews. And I want the future to be a much better place for them. And obviously, I'm always concerned about my brothers, my dad, my brother-in-law, my good friends. At any point, I wouldn't want to be as close to this situation as some of the family members are to George Floyd. And obviously, they're having a funeral for him in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So that's brought that close to home in an area where we aren't very familiar with that. We just see that kind of stuff on CNN. So I'm getting a little choked up just speaking about it. So I'm going to start with Alan first, and then I'll let him go. Alan, you've been a white man who is also Jewish. You're married to an African American man. How does that affect? How does what's going on now? And what have you learned by being married to him? What have you learned just about race relations and, the systematic oppression, and just, you could also speak about, anything you learned from his mother in the rural town that she grew up in. So what has it taught you, and what are your concerns about when, possibly your life partner goes out into the world, and what type of concern you have?
So, my Jewish faith has taught and calls on me every day that I'm alive to focus not on the world to come, but the world we live in. And that Tikkun Olam is my responsibility to make this world a better place now. So to that, and 5,000 years of not being the favorite guy on the street, also imparts a bit of that. We understand difference, but for me, my difference, if I don't put on a yarmulke, if I'm not overtly dressed in clothes that identifies me, disappears. From my husband, it doesn't. From my husband's family, it doesn't. And being with him for the first time, I experienced things that helped me not just understand, but put me as a first person observer. I remember when we were first together, his mom was going into a nursing facility, and I'd known him for a couple of months, and he's from a big family, and this is in rural North Carolina. And his sisters called me up and asked if I would help coordinate the care for his mom in the nursing home. And I thought, well, maybe that's because that's some of the stuff my company does. So sure, I'm happy, but I'm going to get some questions to make sure I know what it is that they're asking for. And, when I asked them, okay, what do you want me to do? They said, well, no, it's not because of your business. It's because you're white. And we want your voice to be heard so that she actually gets the care we need for her to get. And that was shocking for me. It's still shocking. It's still emotional for me, because this is my family. This isn't abstract. This is real. And to think in this century, at this place and time, that I've got to call up a nursing home so that they provide her with the best care is just crazy. So, if anything, it's made me more aware. We're driving in the car together, and if he's driving and we're stopped, as it's happened 3 or 4 times for us before, those things are real and shocking. And what I try to do is use those experiences to talk to the people who look like me and the people in my synagogue and others that, this isn't something you see on just TV. This isn't something that shows up randomly. It is every day. And I think that's a perspective I wouldn't have had here working on my husband. Sorry, I think you're on mute.
Coming on, Alan. I really appreciate that. And I'll let you go. But obviously, this was some great conversation, and I want to continue it some more. So hopefully I can have you on again down the line. Maybe not as many, so everyone's voice can get within the time frame. So thank you so much. I'm going to bring Cammie on next. Thank you so much, though, Alan. Hi, Cammie. So again, now, like, I know you grew up in West Virginia, so that's a story within itself. But also, went to school here at NC State, and we had different things. But what do you see? How do you have dialogue with your colleagues? Because as we know, it's not as diverse, especially with African-American female lawyers. You work around a lot of white males. What is the dialogue there with the protests and everything that's going on right now? And what is your perspective on starting that conversation?
Well, first of all, I think that the legal community in recent years has done a lot to make diversity and inclusion an important part of our profession. I think that corporate America has even embraced, that they want to have diverse legal representation from women to minorities. They get challenged on that often because it's a fairly recent, push or platform that they're taking on. And so a lot of people, accuse, everyone of just kind of walking the walk without talking the talk. But the firm I'm at, like I said, we're approximately 180 attorneys, and we are more than 50% women. So diversity inclusion is very important. Our president actually put out a statement today saying that, and he's a white man, saying that, we are all created equal and we all have an equal right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that when any one person is denied that without consequence, when someone denies a person those rights without consequence, then we've all lost. It's not just that person. So our firm solidly stands behind people that denounce hatred and police brutality and racism. And so, I actually, we do have minorities, women. We have a pretty diverse culture there. I think on the bigger scale, and being from like rural West Virginia, where poverty is a common factor amongst, people who just live there, no matter, regardless of the race. And I think being Black, we weren't always, our surroundings didn't pour into us. And, sometimes people say, well, why you? Like, I have a cousin who was a guy who graduated with me. We were side by side, first cousins, and he ended up going to the military. And, just, a couple of years ago, he says, why did you go to school? Why did you go to college? And why did I go to the military? I don't understand how we both basically walked the same exact line and took polar opposite directions. And I think it's because, people poured into me, you're smart, you can do it. Or maybe because I was a woman, and maybe because he was a Black male, he was getting something else. You're strong. These are, I think that we need to go back and pour into our youth and let them know that, they're capable. One of my colleagues at a prior firm, he was a Jewish guy, and he said that he always knew he'd be a lawyer because everybody expected him to. He just knew that he was going to be in a professional capacity as an adult. And that's what I think we need to pour back into so many times, like whether it's our family situations or the community that we're in, that our youth just isn't being poured into, where they know that they can do it. They have the confidence, they'll have the access and the resources to be whatever they want. I think having you, Mr. West, having, people, minorities, and Barack Obama also, like having minorities on the screen, hearing minority voices, hearing people that have made it from like even the smallest places of earth, like Roseboro or Lewisburg, West Virginia. I think that, I just think that we need to have more Black businesses or minority owned businesses. I think that there are just so many. I think we need to get involved, and we need to vote, and everyone says that, but we need to get involved in our local politics. Show up at a city council meeting. Know that even when laws or rules or ordinances are being, even discussed, know that there's somebody there representing the minority voice that's going to even report back to even you. They could have, there are just so many ways for our voices to be heard. And thankfully, with the technology, advances that we've made. So I think that a lot of people don't know what to do or how to do it or where to start. And, I think believing in yourself and pouring back into our communities, getting our youth to know that they make a difference. And every, generation has tried to do more and more and more. And now more than ever, they have the tools and people are listening. And like Mr. West said, now's the time to actually capitalize on it and make real change. We got to push through strong together. And it's nice that it seems that we're unified, broader than ever. I think that, when Rodney King and, certain things happened when we were younger, it was mostly minorities or Black people out there fighting or protesting, and now you can see on the front lines that it seems that that America is becoming more united despite, whatever message our current president may be trying to push out there. I think that we, have, allies that may be and people realize the importance of human life and existence and our rights to happiness and freedom and equality.
Speaking of freedom and equality, Cammie, I have a question. People are really interested in knowing, now the media is bringing out George Floyd's past situations with the law, and he spent time in prison. And also the autopsy showed that he passed away from health problems and not having a neck. If this police officer he get off because of those things?
Well, the thing about the criminal justice system is that if he goes to trial, he'll be tried by a jury of his peers. And all those things will factor into the evidence. It appears that his family did an independent autopsy. And so not only the medical examiner, his report, but also the independent examiners should be able to come in. There's two sides. The prosecuting attorney is going to be pushing for, conviction. And then his defense attorney will do everything, including trying to bring in character evidence of Mr. Floyd's past or, his propensity to somehow have contributed to his own death, which seems absurd. But the job of the prosecutor will be to, there's a tool called a motion in limine, which basically means that you ask the judge to prevent these types of things from being admitted into court in front of the jury because it's so prejudicial that it will sway the jury in a way that should not be affected at all. And so good lawyering is important. It's really important. Let's say everything comes in, then the good lawyering is really what's going to make the difference and making sure that the real story gets put out there. And the standard, as you know, is beyond a reasonable doubt. And so hopefully the prosecuting attorney will have all the tools that he or she needs to get us there.
Well, for those of you watching, you can donate to George Floyd's Memorial Fund. And also there's another fund that they say there's well over close to $1 million, some people have said. So hopefully he'll get the best attorneys. If not, then I don't know where these riots and protests will go to. So anyways, thanks, Cammie. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you. And I will chat again.
Thank you, Chas.
Appreciate you so much. No worries.
Thank you, Chas.
Awesome. David, my sister's going to go last, but just with you, any personal emotions you have with the media talking about the protests and the rioters and the looting, just really quick before I let you go. And thanks again so much for sharing your time again here on my True Sport podcast with me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been good. A lot of fun. And I always enjoy hearing different perspectives. It's weird, not a lot of people talk to us, people don't think we can process, different information that's not sports information. So I always enjoy being in these kind of environments.
I only got 3 likes when I posted this because they were probably like, okay, Chas, really? This is but it is what it is. Right, we are well aware of what's going on. And we know people that, like I said, my sister, and that's why I wanted to have Dr. Koontz come on and Cammie and Alan and different people, because we've been able to travel and meet people that can also help educate us and give us different views. So go ahead and finish, David, but I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just in terms of just, again, this entire, I guess, episode that we're in, it's just another layer of the fight. It's a fight for basic decency. It's a fight for basic human freedoms that we've been denied as long as we've been here. And I think obviously the way that society is going, we've got to figure out a way to be better. It's just that simple. We've got to be better. We've got to figure out a way to evolve and move ourselves forward. And if we don't, we're gonna be in for a rough run of it. The 2020s, everybody's predicting the 2020s to be tough because, our nation is standing still right now. We're still dealing with, people not realizing that when someone says, I can't breathe, and you're in a position of authority, you should be sympathetic to that. We have, again, just too many issues at our table right now for us not to be focused on real social and societal change, because that's the only way we get out of this is a reformed sort of centered society where we are literally reforming the way institutions have behaved for the last 200 years or so. So it's a conversation that's not going to stop. These young people are too informed. Social media has too many access points to information. You can Google and Wikipedia just about anything. You can get any bit of information and fact check people at the drop of a dime on your phone. So I just think that the young people are too informed, too tuned in. They're not going to let this just go away. Because again, this keeps happening. It's systematic, it's nationwide, it's coordinated, and it's going to take all of us doing a bunch of different things, to shift and get this country moving in the right direction.
Well said. Well said. Again, two-time NBA champion, NBA All-Star David West.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on, and
Absolutely.
thanks for all everything that you said and just spending time with us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So,
you be well.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, D, it's on you. D, it's just me and you, and we have, kind of ran out of time. It's 8:00, but, it's Facebook Live, so if they want to keep watching, they can. But D, I'm so frustrated, and I'm so mad, and it's just personal now, just like talking to you, like I've been so emotional, and I just read a tweet where people, were saying, my colleagues are emailing me and saying I'm sorry and saying, can you help me process that? How can I be better in engaging in that conversation? Because I don't really want an apology.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want an apology. I just want them to do better in their struggle with their families and their, with their platforms and their access. When things go on, they have to talk about it. It's not really anything, I want them to do for me. So where would you come from with that angle?
Now, I had a similar talk with Richard today because I listened to one of my favorite white pastors. He did a Instagram Live, and he brought on another well-known Black pastor. And I was very disappointed in the whole conversation because the conversation seemed to be stemming from this place of, and I'll just say I'll say it in a short sentence. I've always, I've never had problems with Black people, right? And it was almost like trying to justify, and I'm doing this, and I met with my Black pastoral staff, and he hardly let the Black pastor say anything. It was more of let me get this off my chest because I feel guilty. And I found myself getting disappointed. But then I shook myself because to me, it's a reflection of just how divided we are and just how little time white people take with Black people's issues, right? So Black America, we are taught very early, pretty much after we're born, how to navigate and deal with white folks, how to deal with white space, how to deal with white places. I mean, we are taught that we can breathe it. Right. So we're taught how to talk, how to carry ourselves, how to be watchful. We're taught how to deal with the bankers. We're taught. I don't know if any white people ever have any conversations, and it's coming out now. They are pretty much, they have ignored us. Right. They don't have to learn how to navigate in our spaces. They don't have to learn how to accept Blackness because they have been rewarded for ignoring us. Right. And it's not even intentional. So I don't say this to condemn or criticize my white sisters and brothers, but it's just the truth of the matter that in the United States, white people do not have to deal with us. They may have to share a workplace with us, or they may be in a restaurant with us, but they don't have to navigate Blackness. And so that's probably why it's frustrating for us, is because we're like, oh my gosh, we've been saying this for years. We've been saying this forever and ever. And it takes this much protest, this much rioting, and a man being killed on video and shown on national television before I can even get a, how can I help? And I'm sorry. So there's a right to be frustrated, but I don't think we should, direct that frustration back, because I do think that people are really, truly trying to help. But I think it's a reflection of the system. For all the people who are like, white supremacy doesn't exist, systematic racism doesn't exist, these are good examples of the fact that they do exist, and they're still controlling things invisibly.
Awesome. Yeah, I am being, I acknowledge it, and I'm having the conversation. Obviously, I'm coaching now, so I'm having the conversations with my kids, and it just also makes me as an African American woman more emotional. Like, I'm already emotional with what's going on, and how can I help, and then it's like, and it's just like the story of a Black woman's life, kind of like we're balancing everybody. We're trying to make sure we're okay, and then the next person is okay. And it's like we kind of never get out of that. Like, for my nieces, I hope, their path to success and everything is a lot more fluid and more open, that they don't have to carry sort of that burden. And so obviously I have to start the conversation now and welcome those conversations and kind of direct them, just like my ancestors and, my parents did for me, to have a better opportunity and better space and better platforms. So I do agree with that. I do agree with that. D, talk right before we're going to go. I know we still have some viewers, so we can talk. But before I leave, I want you to express to people how important voting is. Mm-hmm. And then I have one more question for you, and I promise I'll let you go and get back to my nieces and nephews. So if you could tell everyone how important everyone walking in, I have some banners going across the ticker. These are places that you can support: Campaign Zero, the Innocent Project, Run with Ma, National Bailout. So for a lot of the protesters that are out there, if they do get arrested, if you want to donate money, time, and really organization, this is National Bailout would be someone that you would really want to, contribute extra money to, if you have it, for the protesters out there who are doing the grassroots work. So again, DJ, if you could just tell us really quickly how important voting is.
Voting is our voice in America, and there's lots of competing ideas about the importance of voting. And I've seen a lot of people just say, I don't like either candidate, and I'm just going to stay home. But I think you just have to kind of reverse the question. If voting was not important, then why did they fight so hard to keep Black and brown people from voting? Why do they fight so hard to keep women from voting? Why have they now, appealed much of the Voting Rights Act? Because they don't want us to vote. It's actually okay to protest. It's actually okay, to loot and riot, because, most people have insurance to cover their buildings and so forth and so forth. But what really makes America afraid is when we go to the polls. Okay, so I have to admit, the presidential candidate that we have for the Democratic Party is not my favorite person, but I am going to vote because I'm really extremely disappointed with the lack of leadership and just the lack of awareness that the current president has demonstrated. And I'm very so disappointed by that I'm going to cast my vote, and I'm going to cast my vote on the local level, the state level. And, like David said, if you're not sure who to vote for, there are lots of organizations committed to, describing each candidate and giving you the ins and outs of what this means and what their policies are. So I definitely think that everyone who can, they need to go to the polls. And this is something, I'm loving what I see. I'm loving the beautiful, peaceful, multicultural protest. But if we do not show up in November, and if we do not show up, like many states just had their elections, Maryland and DC was one of them. If we don't show up for the local elections and for the state elections, and if we don't show up in November, then we've really lost a lot of our progress. And people have kind of glorified the civil rights. So, of course, I love the movie Selma, and we glorify the marches, but Dr. King, the SCLC, the NAACP, SNCC, they had policies, right? Their whole focus was to get things changed on the federal, state, and local level, and to be able to vote. So we do all of that work, all of the work that they did, all of the people who were hanged, who were killed, who were assassinated, who were murdered, for us to sit home, it's almost like, it's just spitting in their faces and spitting in all the work that they did for us.
Well, you heard it from Dr. Coons. Get out and vote. It's a duty. It's what you need to do. Protest and rioting, it works. But if we don't get to vote in the local governments, on all the local stages, like everything, and you guys got to be ready to get out and vote. And like you said, we have two interesting, people to choose from. But at the end of the day, our vote is important. And if you're tired of the leadership, quit retweeting and tweeting and talking about it and do something about it. That's how I feel. So, D, I know I keep saying one last question, but we have voting changes things in real time. Steve King House, Republican, was just defeated in the primary yesterday. So again, our listeners, people realize, people see that voting is important. And Ferguson just got the first African-American mayor in Ferguson. So the riots and the protests, everything's working, but we got to keep the fight. And now it's great that some of our colleagues and different people that were quiet before are now opening up the conversation and understanding that things have to change. My last and final question is, D, we have the protests and we have the riots, and we have, like you said, our culture is so different now with people having different platforms, different levels of income. A lot of people are saying, why are we going crazy now and protesting across the board when police officers murder people of color, but we aren't doing the same thing with black on black crime? So could you help me and help everyone this? Like, I'm tired of hearing this black on black crime like it's the same thing as police brutality and police, murdering our brothers and sisters as well. Don't forget about our sisters. So could you end this podcast by telling us a little bit about that and what's the difference and why it's different?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a frustrating question. It's low hanging fruit. Most people who pose that question, they really haven't thought it through very well, because it's almost similar to saying, why do I see all this stuff for breast cancer awareness? Don't they know that people get liver cancer? Don't they know that people get leukemia? Right? It's the same. It's almost the same concept, right? The whole point is, when black on black crime is terrible, so white on white crime is terrible, right? So when we see anybody murder anybody, what we do know statistically is most white people kill other white people. Most black people kill other black people, right? So we're even divided into murders, okay? We don't cross over normally to kill other races. It's interracial. And there are people who are working diligently within those communities that are really being bombarded with black on black crime, black on black murder rates, and so forth. There are people on the ground, but they don't get a lot of attention. Now, what we do know, that when a black person kills another black person, the police come, someone's taken to jail, they're indicted, they get a trial, they get a lawyer if they can't afford one, and normally there is a conviction, right? I mean, we know several people personally, who have experienced the criminal justice system. Unfortunately, as we have seen over and over and over and over again, when a police officer kills a Black and brown man or woman, very few of them are even indicted. Very few. And for those who are indicted, very few, if any, are convicted. And we can go back to 13-year-old Tamir Rice. Okay, this was a 13-year-old boy who was shot and killed by the police. He finally was indicted. He was not convicted, and he is still serving as a police officer at another precinct. And so it is very frustrating to know that even like the great news today that the officers have all been indicted, that does not mean that they will be convicted. We watched just a few years ago when Philando Castile, sitting on the passenger side of his vehicle with the seat back, right, very relaxed, talking calmly to the officer, letting the officer know that he had a gun, he had a permit to carry the gun, did not seem aggressive, was not retaliating, a 5-year-old in the back seat, and that police officer shot him dead on TV. The police officer was indicted. The police officer was not convicted. And so this is the pain, because at least I can expect that if someone takes my life, there's going to be an investigation. There's going to be, the criminal justice system will work for me. But when a police officer does the very same thing, we see very few convictions. And that is the rage, and that is the anger that you're seeing. Minnesotans are still upset from Philando Castile. And we're still hurt from Trayvon Martin and Ahmaud Arbery and Tamir Rice and Sandra Bland and Breonna Stewart and Aiyana Jones, and let's not forget the guy in North Carolina, Brother Jonathan, who was shot almost 10 times in Charlotte. There was no conviction there. There was not even an indictment. So that to me is the difference, right? Black on Black crime, the criminal justice system jumps in. But when a police officer does something very similar, like we watched, I haven't watched, but I've seen the picture of that officer kneeing Mr. Floyd in his neck. And we know that the separate autopsy has said that he died because of that kneeing in his neck. And I'm still not very confident, Chastity, that there's going to be a conviction. And we saw George Zimmerman walk free. Now, George Zimmerman is not the police, but there seems to be this dichotomy between Black and white crime, that when white men kill Black and brown bodies, there's hardly ever any justice. And let me just prove the point. With the Emmett Till murder, because his name has come back up. And I mean, I don't think it gets any more gruesome than Emmett Till. His mother allowed his body to be an open casket. So everyone saw the grotesqueness, the disfigurement of what they did to his body. We know that the woman lied that when she said that he whistled at her. We also know that the men who killed him, they bragged about it. That case was brought to trial 3 times in Mississippi. Okay. We finally got some type of conviction I think it was 2005. Okay. So that was the first time that a white man in the state of Mississippi had ever been convicted of murdering a Black body. So imagine, right? It's in the 2000s, Chastity. And this is the rage. This is not just the rage of me, but this is the rage of my ancestors. I believe in the Bible, and I believe in Ezekiel that the bones will cry out. And I think the blood of our ancestors, the blood of Emmett Till, the blood of Medgar Evers, the blood of Dr. Martin Luther King, who we're not sure who shot him, the blood of Malcolm X. I mean, the blood of all of those slaves, right? Of those enslaved Africans who died in unmarked graves, all of that blood is crying out, right? So it's being reflected in you and I, but there's a spiritual process to this too, right? Because vengeance is God, all right? And you reap what you sow. And so, yeah, you're right. There is a lot of black on black crime, and I'm outraged by it. And people are working hard. People like LeBron James started a school in his community, right? To help the youth, to keep them off the streets. Right? We know how to solve it, but it takes a lot of manpower. But again, the police, they get fired and they get rehired somewhere else. And that's really hard to swallow, because that means that same person who shot Tamir Rice is working somewhere else. And Chaz, you and I both know, like, when you don't get to feel the consequences of your actions, you're liable to do those actions again. You know, and that's one thing that Richard kept saying over and over again. He kept saying, Danielle, that cop looks so comfortable. He looked like he has done this before. He looked very comfortable with his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck. So, you know, forgive me for the emotion, but that's a very emotive question, and I hope that helps our listeners.
No, it definitely helped me, and I'm ready to answer that question now when people bring that up. Thank you so much, Dr. Koontz. I'm putting that in the universe. I do believe that our colleagues and other races are opening up because they do understand, and I think that's what you said, and that's what we were taught. That's what we believe in. As much good as you put out, it comes back, but as much bad as you put out also comes back. So if I would just like to say to everyone out there, I mean, my parents, their parents, our ancestors all wanted us to have a better future, a better life, better access, better education.
Mm-hmm.
You spoke on it earlier, and I'll end with this. And you said that white Americans have never had to do anything to be comfortable in our space, to be comfortable with having conversations with us. But I do know one thing. Everyone loves their kids for the most part. I mean, there are some extreme cases,
right? But
everyone loves their kids, and people have to understand that the youth is our future. And what you're seeing now is a lot of young people, black, white, of all different races, who are more knowledgeable, who are fed up, who don't see this as unending. We were kind of raised to, like, just do better than the last generation, you know, improve for the next generation, you know, and get the education again. Now they have the education. And the thing is, they're done. They're fed up. You know, they're living off of our ancestors' energy, and they don't see, like, I need to be in a certain place because I'm trying to get in school, or I'm trying to get that job, or I'm trying to provide for my family. You know, the things that we had to come up with and how we were raised. And so I want to say to all the races out there that America is a very beautiful country. I've traveled all over the world. It's a very beautiful country. But at the end of the day, if we don't have these conversations, if we don't have these dialogue, if you don't start teaching your children to be more diverse, you don't have to hang with them like people, but to be more diverse and be open to the conversation and to acknowledge wrong when you see wrong and you don't have a problem speaking up. Don't get mad with what Bernice King said. If change doesn't come, the worst is yet to come. And I just want to tell people a secret. We were raised, like you said, Dee, we were raised, don't go to the schoolhouse and cause a fuss. Don't give those white people any trouble. Don't embarrass your parents. Our generation, our nieces and nephews are not taught that. So that's just, and I will say it for the white people out there, they knew our grandparents were telling us this. They knew we weren't going to go and do this thing. And it's not, and that time is ending. And this new generation, we're already talking about the millennials, everyone, all these kids are different. You know, they're different these days. And that's not just in our community. It's in the Chinese community. It's in the Jewish community. It's in the white community. The kids are different. They're no longer like, we're gonna keep this in house. This is how our family rolls. You know, they're no longer with that. So if America, and we want the future better for our kids, we have to have these conversations and we have to start speaking up. So I would just encourage everyone on any level, you know, from the most rural town in North Carolina to the most popular city in the US, when you see things aren't going right on whatever platform you have, speak up or get someone that you know fights for those issues and alert them, let them know what's going on. And that's where it starts. Because we're all outraged. I'm outraged. A lot of people in the community are outraged. But at the same time, I will say this. I'm not against police. I'm not mad at police. I'm mad at police just like I'm mad at teachers, just like I'm mad at coaches, just like I'm mad at leaders who abuse their power. All police aren't bad. All teachers aren't great. All preachers aren't great. There are people that abuse their power, and that's what bothers me the most, you know? And that's what people are outraged about, and that's what collectively we have to change in every area with systematic discrimination within any type of leadership roles, whether it's corporate, whether it's CEOs, whether it's people in the human resource department, whether it's NCAA college coaches, athletic directors. Stop abusing your platforms. And obviously, you know, you're always going to have people that are bad leaders, but at the end of the day, this percentage is close to 70% of people abusing their power. Let's try to get it down to 20%, okay? And that's where I am. That's what I'm passionate about, and it really bothers me. And I hate when leaders and people in power abuse their power, and that's what some men and women in the police force are doing, and that's why people are outraged. So again, I don't want anyone to think on this show we don't support, because we have family who are police officers. But at the end of the day, it's just terrible. And so that's what I want to encourage everyone to do. Have dialogue, speak up. If you don't want to speak up, get someone you do know, find grassroots organizations that need to know about these problems and tip them off, just like you tip them off when we're having a barbecue and you don't agree with it. Just like you tip them off to other small nuances that don't matter. They're quick to call the police for every little thing that doesn't matter. Okay, call the police on things that do matter and alert people on the discrimination and the police brutality that you see. So that's it. That's it, D. That's what I got. We got to get off of here. But thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to cut and edit this and just put different takes up. Thanks for coming on. Is there anything you want to end with?
Well, I mean, I just want to say, because I know, Chaz, that you attract a very diverse audience. And, you know, I think what bothered me about the pastor that I was watching, when you come into the room at a time like this, just listen. Listen. Don't talk. Just listen, right? And really try to hear where the other person is coming from. So I think we could really make a lot of inroads if we could just kind of turn off our opinions. You know, I mean, I'm tired of hearing the stories. Well, my parents worked hard too, and I was poor too. So what's your excuse, right? Like, that doesn't help anything. Sometimes you just have to sit and you just have to listen. And it's not just about race. It could be about, you know, sex, and it could be about politics. It could be about the economy. You have to sometimes just, you know, hold your tongue and choose to listen to the other person. Because I think the most effective people right now in the white community are those who are saying, how can I help? And then they're pausing to let you speak, right? Because that's what the people out in the streets, they're basically saying, just, you don't see me, right? And that's one thing I learned from my sons. Like, I'll be on my phone, texting you guys. And I mean, my oldest, he'll just be having a fit. Mommy, please put your phone down. Listen to me. And essentially, that is the black cry of America. Please put down your ideas and listen to us. Stop telling us, stop talking at us, but listen to us, right? So that's kind of what I really am urging people who want to be allies. Listen and learn. Thanks, Chaz.
Listen and learn. We're going to go off of that. I can't wait to edit this and put some of this great information out. Thanks for joining me tonight. Kiss my babies. And I said 6 nieces and nephews. Tell Sarah I'm sorry. I forgot about my 4-month-old niece, Sarah, who is going to just take our generation to another level, because her older cousins are different. So anyways, D, love you, and we'll be in touch. Kiss the babies for me. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone also for joining. Bye-bye.